What's the creepiest true story that happened to you or someone you know? Didn't realize until years later that I was almost snatched. Grew up in a small town. Out playing in the yard with my 2 younger siblings like every other summer day. Guy pulls up alongside the yard in a truck, calls me over. Asks my name, if I'm having a good summer. He says he could really use my help, he's out looking for his lost puppy. He can show me a photo of the puppy if I come closer. No, closer. The picture is small, can I please help him? I yelled to my brother on the other side of the yard, Dan, come help us find a puppy. I have to assume he thought I yelled Dad because he noped, screeched out of there without another word. I remember being really worried about that puppy, until we had an assembly at our primary school about things strangers might say to lure you into their vehicles. I just moved into a basement suite. Every time I went out I would lock the deadbolt but not the door handle, but when I came home a lot of the time the deadbolt would be unlocked and the door handle would be locked. At first I thought I was just confused about which one I had locked, so I started paying more attention. It kept happening and I realized someone must be going in when I went out. I assumed it was the landlady and was annoyed but didn't say anything at first. Then one day I came home and found the wrong lock locked again. I went in pissed off and opened the fridge to get something to eat. There was a book in the fridge that I had never seen before. I collected old books and this one was published in the early 1900s, which creeped me out completely because it was like it had been left for me. I finally called my landlady and asked if she was going into my apartment and told her what had happened. She freaked right out, said the last person who lived there was a really creepy guy with mental health and drug problems. She got all the locks changed that day and it never happened again. Just so you know, he more than likely locks the doors when he's inside the house too, so he can hear your return. You were probably coexisting with him for a while. If he locked the doors while he was leaving a place he has no property to risk, he was very kind. I definitely thought of this, but the place was all one room with no closets, so there wasn't anywhere for him to go. Unless he spent a lot of time under the bed. My family were driving on the rural main road of Poland. We're Polish, and next to our car was this truck delivering large concrete pipes. We drove next to this truck for maybe an hour, maybe 2. I was a teenager so I didn't really care. My dad figures we stop at the next gas station for a quick toilet break. As I exit the car, a pair of bikes drive past the gas station. I noticed because it was loud as fuck. PP over and we go back on the road. About a mile or so down the road there's an accident. The bikes had caught up with the truck and as they were about to drive past it the large concrete pipes fell off the truck and smushed the bikers. Maybe they weren't fastened properly, or the truck swerved. I'm not sure, but they were dead. Blood everywhere. I still have a hard time thinking of what could have happened. It is weird to see the before and after effects. We were driving along this busy street going at decent speed and this guy kept wanting to pass us. I told my friend just let the asshole to go around us since he seems to be in a big hurry. About 2 miles down the road, the asshole ended up hitting a parked car on the side of the street. My mom and her friend were out and about late at night, heading to a party. Their car broke down, and being a rural town with a small population, they had to walk about a mile to the nearest house for help. They got to the front door, and of all people to answer the door, it was one of their high school teachers. He was horrified to see them out late at night, alone. He let them use his phone but scolded them saying it was not safe, the location, time and circumstances. He let them know they were absolute fools and heeded a somewhat vague warning. My mom called my grandfather to come bring gas and or possibly tow their vehicle. When the girls got back to their car, there was a severed cow head on the hood, blood everywhere. This was near Hermiston, Oregon, apparently well known for devil worshippers. Have there been any other strange occurrences around there that you know of? There was another story involving her, my aunt, uncle and one of their friends. They had the bright idea to go into an abandoned home. Rumor was that it was used for sacrifices by the Satanists. Only one of the group was brave enough to go down into the basement. My uncle. The group, Sans uncle, heard him yell out in pain. The girls ran out of the house in fear. My uncle's friend went downstairs to see what had happened. The last thing my uncle remembered was getting hit in the back of the head, presumably with a pipe or plank of wood. He was certain it was not self-inflicted by way of bumping into something. The bleeding gash was closer to the base of his skull. His friend helped him up the stairs and out of the house. My uncle refuses to speak of the incident to this day. I didn't get any stories out of my mom about it, but she has always been afraid of Rathdrum, Idaho. Apparently the devil worshippers there are worse than Hermiston. I've told this before, but my female friend's dad once answered the door late one night, like 11 p.m. or so, and there was a weird man asking for directions to the main road. Her dad usually works nights, but on this rare occasion he'd taken the night off. So, he told him the route, and the weird man thanked him and went off, but in the opposite direction. He'd seemed quite nervous and jittery, which is odd, but what's even weirder is he's known in the area, he'd lived there years, he wouldn't need to ask directions to the main road. Anyway, it was revealed in the news that on the same night, he'd broken into a house and violently raped a woman and her daughter, and later tried to sexually assault another woman in the street, but a passerby managed to help her get away. This was after he called at my friend's house, so he'd gone there, then went off in that wrong direction and tried to grape someone. Now, my friend's family was having a lot of drama at the time. Her mom is a nutcase alcoholic and the whole street knew that she'd been sent to rehab. With her dad working nights, it's likely that the weird grapey man knew my friend would be home alone. We think she had a very close call with that one. If I can find the story on the news, I'll add it in. Edit, the news story. The bit about banging on the steelworker's door is my friend's dad. Might have mixed a few bits up, but it's all there in the article. My babysitter was killed back in the mid-80s when I was about 6 to 7 years old. They found her body in a garbage bag near a department store and never found the killer. No one knew anything about it. No witnesses, no clues, and this was a smaller city of about 50,000 people. So when a crime happens, word travels fast. That's crazy. So did you find out, or did your parents tell you? Or did they not tell you right away and just say she's not around anymore? It was one of those things that the adults would talk about around me, but they just assumed I didn't understand what was going on. Which at that age I didn't understand. My sister from the ages of around 8 to 15 would take rides in taxis to the local gym since our parents were often busy or not around after the divorce. She had a dedicated taxi driver who was huge. A while later, I was working at IHOP and this taxi driver had been let go and I never heard about exactly why. But he was my manager and always friendly with me, but often asked me about my sister, perhaps once a month or so if she would come in to visit. Little Sylvie, he'd call her. Odd, but whatever, I never thought about it. Well, one day he was arrested for trying to solicit sex from a minor online, but was actually talking to a cop. He's now in jail for a few years. I still want to talk to my sister about her experience, but can't bring myself to do it. It's kind of one of those I hope I never find out, but pray she's also alright and nothing happened. Back in the 70s, my grandfather dropped my grandmother, mom, and her 2 sisters off to do some shopping on his way to work. Since he wasn't able to pick them up, they hitchhiked home. My mom at the time was only around 10 or 11, middle sister would have been about 7 or 8 and the youngest was about a year old. They get picked up by a guy in pickup truck, who has them all sit in the back row with one of them holding the baby. My grandmother was giving directions to their home from the highway, but the guy ignored her and went by their exit claiming he had to make a stop first. Didn't really say much else to them during the drive. My mom remembers my grandmother being very quiet and very nervous. Eventually they come up to a farm. Driver tells them to wait in the car and goes inside the house. While he's gone they just sit there terrified. They're in the middle of nowhere and know they couldn't make it out on foot. A few minutes later the driver comes out with a second guy who looks into truck and sees my mom's youngest sister. He starts flipping out, screaming at the driver that he shouldn't have brought the baby back, they aren't going to do anything with her and some other things I can't remember, ends up telling him to get them away from the farm. Driver gets back into the truck, apologizes, and they get back on the highway and drive again in silence. My grandmother, normally a very smart woman, had him drive directly to their house, although I suspect her reasoning was she'd already given him the address before anything seemed off. They lived at that house for several years and luckily never saw either of them a second time. TLDR, a baby saved my grandma and her kids from being raped. Why wouldn't she drive off? The guy driving took the keys with him when he went inside. Those guys must have done that before. Did they call the cops and tell them where to look for those creeps? Sadly, I don't believe so. It's possible my grandparents did and pretended to my mom and her sisters that nothing bad happened, but as far as my mother knows they didn't. When I was a child I was always stricken by this irrational fear that when I went outside at night, I had to walk straight into the house without looking back, because if I looked back, someone would be following me. One day after dinner I went out to the car to get my book bag, and I was continuing my ritual of walking straight inside without looking back, adrenaline pumping, anxiety going full force, and I just stopped and said to myself, this is stupid. I made myself look back. When I looked back, I saw what appeared to be someone crouched down behind my mom's car and was peeking their head around. They were just staring at me and smiling. It appeared to be a woman in her mid-30s, maybe 40, with curly short blonde hair. We made eye contact for a second and then she ducked back behind the car where I couldn't see her. I stood frozen for a second and then ran inside. I told my mom. We went outside to check. No one was there. My mom didn't exactly not believe me, but she wasn't very concerned either. Yeah, there might be someone in the dark though. This happened to my friend. She was 15 at the time and lived with her parents. She woke up in the night feeling that someone was watching her. She had a big room in the main floor. She woke up and was just sure she wasn't alone in the room. Heart pounding, she turned on her night light, and there was a strange man sitting in a chair by the corner of the room. He was masturbating. She screamed bloody murder and her dad woke up and ran to her room. A small fight ensued. Cops was called. They were living close to a housing for immigrants, and one of the asylum seekers was really mentally ill. My poor friend went to years and years of therapy and is doing well today. There used to be billboards for anti-drunk driving campaigns that would show a picture of a happy family or whatever and then let you know they were all killed by drunk drivers. When I was about 16, I saw my own face on one of those signs. It was a picture of myself, my little brother, and my 2 childhood friends that lived next door to me when I was in 1st grade. So, maybe I'm dead. One of these billboards was right by my work, so I had to look at it every day. After telling my mom about it, she said the father of the kids next door was a photographer. Photographer from the local alt weekly lived down the street when I was a kid. They were doing a story on youth homelessness, and for privacy reasons they couldn't put a picture of actual homeless youth on the cover of the paper. So you guessed it, it was me and my brother looking scruffy and forlorn. My parents thought it was hilarious. I was in a KFC car park at about 8 p.m., and I had gotten out of my car to fetch something from the boot before I could go through the drive-thru. My car was still running. The door was wide open and the car park only had one other car in it, which was just a bit ahead of where mine was parked. I was closing the door to the boot and the other car honked their horn. However, I could see no reason why. I wasn't in their way and they could have driven past with ease. I was tired and they were being rude, so I gave them the finger before I began walking back to my door. Then the man in the passenger side of the other car jumped out, left his door wide open and began running towards my car. At this point I shat myself, because there was nobody else around and I'm a young female who at the time had no idea how to defend myself against a potential threat, so as soon as I was back in my car I locked the doors and began to drive towards the exit of the car park. However, the man hadn't managed to get to my car on time, so the woman who was driving their car began accelerating towards the exit of the car park to try and block me in, whilst the man ran towards my car again at the exit. I managed to get past their car by driving over the pavement, and the relentless creeps followed me for about 15 minutes before vanishing. I ended up driving around for a while in the opposite direction of where I was living at the time, and went to stay with a friend for a few hours before actually driving home. Freaked me the fuck out. I was sure this was going to end with you discovering someone had climbed into your car whilst you weren't looking, and the couple had seen and were trying to warn you. When I was about 9 or 10, my older brother and I had a few friends over to stay the night. My dad had to work the next day, so we were all left at the house by ourselves for the day. We were excited to play PlayStation all day on our Saturday off. Well, my dad worked late that night, until probably 8 or 9. As soon as the sun went down we went into one of the rooms upstairs to play Uno. Fast forward 30 minutes and we start hearing footsteps slowing walking up the wooden stairs. My dad wasn't going to be home for another 2 hours, so we didn't know who it was. There were 4 of us, me, my brother, my friend, and his friend. We would take turns walking out of the room to see what it was, but before we could look down the dark stairs we would hear what sounded like someone running down the stairs as fast as they could so they couldn't be seen. This continued for probably 2 hours, ending with all of us huddled in the room upstairs with the door wedged shut with a chair until my dad got home. None of us were really believers in anything paranormal, but a child's imagination is a crazy thing. Now 15 years later, I still don't know what to make of it, but every one of us heard those footsteps walking up those dark stairs. I bring it up to my friend who I'm still friends with and he remembers it just as vividly as I do. It kind of creeps me out just thinking about it. Why didn't all of you run out as a group? I think we actually did check it out as a group. We were wielding those Nerf gun bazookas to use as bats and a fold-up chair 30 minutes or so after it started happening. However, the same thing happened again with the scurrying down the stairs. None of us ran down the stairs in case it was a robber with a gun or something. So we got freaked out as a group and started sending one out to check it out at a time because us others were too scared to look. Might have just been a persistent thief. Or a reluctant serial killer. Either one. It was 2001 and my friend and I were 17, both female, and driving back from a late movie to my house one night. I lived in a pretty rural area in Maine, about 20 minutes from the nearest town. As we were driving down the highway through the woods, we passed a median with a car sitting in it, facing in the oncoming direction, with all its lights off. Right after we drove past it, it flashed its lights, did a 3-point turn and started driving behind us. We giggled that, oh, it must be a gang initiation, we're gonna get murdered, because this was Maine and that was obviously not what was happening. The turnoff for my road was a few miles away and this car stayed behind us the whole time. We made the left turn and the car kept going down the highway. Phew. But 30 seconds later we realized that the car must have backed up on the highway and made the turn after us. Now we were getting a little worried. There was still one more road to turn down before we got to my house, this is way in the woods, and the car did the same thing. Backed up and made the left after us. Now we were legit freaked. I had a long driveway and the car followed us right into the driveway and almost up to my house, which had all the lights on because my mom was home. We ran into my house, just in time to see the mystery car reverse back down the driveway and drive away. To this day we still have no idea why that car was following us, if they thought we were someone else or if they actually had bad intentions and only changed their mind when they saw that my house lights were on. Since we only ever saw the front of the car, we didn't get a license plate or a better description than a blue car. Edit, lots of good advice about not going home if someone is following you. I should have posted a map earlier since it's probably hard to imagine why we couldn't just turn around and go to a public area. Here's where it all went down. When I was around 14 years old, I really liked to go for runs with my Shepherd Cross Lab. I lived in a fairly quiet, clean suburban neighborhood that was situated beside a broad expanse of pasture used by about 10 horses, I would say it was roughly 40 acres. Anyway, a bike path ran between the pasture and my neighborhood and I generally ran down the path. One night I decided to go with my pup around 10 p.m. May not seem like the smartest decision, but I had spent many nights with my group of friends biking/rollerblading around the neighborhood, so I thought nothing of the late hour. I was running down the bike path with my dog, who is a big pup yet the friendliest guy you'll meet. As we ran I noticed a dark lump a little ways ahead, and because it was nearly pitch black I could barely see it. I dismissed it as a garbage bag. As we drew closer, my dog perked up his ears and his hackles went up and he started to growl. Which he rarely ever does, he loves basically everything. I stopped running and stared as the garbage bag started to move. 14-year-old me still didn't really know what the heck I was looking at, and it wasn't until the supposed garbage stood up that I realized it was a man, who then started to run towards us. My dog then turned around and, I kid you not, started to run and yank me along behind him. We reached a street, he darted down it, then pulled me into a dark alley, onto another street, then another alley, then another street, until we somehow lost the guy. My dog saved my life, I'm pretty sure. The guy may not have been an axe murderer, but it turns out some creepy ex-felon was arrested in our neighborhood about 2 days later. I love my dog. Edit, important bit of context, this happened around 1995. In freshman year of middle school, 6th grade, there was a once-a-week group therapy session with developmentally delayed kids that involved them doing some crafts activity or playing with Legos or watching a movie as a group. It was half normal kids, half DD kids, and the normal kids could sign up for it. I signed up pretty instantly as it meant an escape from history once a week. One of my best friends at the time had the same idea, and it basically turned into a second lunch period for us. The whole thing was overseen by a therapist named Bruce and it was generally pretty laid back. Bruce was an overweight 50-ish balding guy with the attitude and general appearance of Santa Claus. He ran most of the school's extracurriculars and was pretty much universally liked. The other important player in this story was a kid who I'll call G. You know that stereotype of psychopaths being obsessed with animal torture as a kid? This was dead on G. He'd regularly tell these long excited stories during group about how much fun he had last week tearing the leg off a squirrel he caught in his live trap, or other similar things. Most of us just sort of ignored him as it was just sort of assumed that he was all talk and just making up gross stuff to get attention. So one week we were playing with Play-Doh. Since it was a DD group, the huge tub of Play-Doh had long since assumed a uniform shade of turd brown, and the general drive was to get people to build things and tell stories about them. Most people just built dinosaurs or threw clay at each other. G, for whatever reason, had a huge flat square slab laid out and was building 4 large pillars on the corners. He eventually put a roof on it, which wouldn't stay on due to the lack of interior supports. The normal kids would always leave a few minutes early as the group ran right into the start of the next period and we'd need time to get to class. I was no different, and walked out while Bruce and the DD kids were smashing Play-Doh, giggling and throwing chunks of turd dough back into the bin. I got to my next class and the teacher wasn't there. Nobody knew what was going on. About 10 minutes later she finally showed up looking frazzled and wouldn't give us any information other than something happened that needed staff attention. Being 6th graders, we went nuts with speculation. A few hours later I ran into the friend from the group, who was visibly jumpy and disturbed. He wouldn't tell me why other than mentioning that therapy group was cancelled indefinitely. I kept prying for information and eventually got the story out of him. So during the cleanup the Play-Doh had to be compacted back into its tub. This involved lots of smashing Play-Doh sculptures, a bit that the DD kids greatly enjoyed to the point where they'd try to smash other people's stuff. G's house was one of the last things to go. He smashed down 2 columns, let one of the other DDs smash another, and finally dared Bruce to smash the last one really hard. The last one with a pocket knife in it. I never saw either Bruce or G ever again. Holy fucking shit. Have you Googled his name since? Unfortunately his real name is a really common one and there seem to be 3 of them in the area, none of whom match his age. Part of the reason I wrote the incident up the way I did was to emphasize what was personally the creepiest part. We never got any closure on what happened to either of them. This was 1994 to 1995 too, so there was no Facebook or anything similar that had let me easily get in contact with him.